And what we always tell these guys, and I failed at this miserably, and I'm trying to be great at it now as a leader. The people who are the most successful, they could take a punch because they're not afraid to lose. They surrendered the outcome. And we always say this, and I tell every kid this I train with now. I tell every coach. When next talk I go to Baylor, I'm going to tell the Baylor Bears this: the most dangerous guy in a fight is the one who has nothing to lose.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Today we are joined by NBA player development coach Phil Beckner. Coach Beckner is nationally known for his work as a high-performance consultant with elite athletes, sports teams, and business organizations to enhance performance professionally and increase personal growth. He spent over 10 years coaching at the highest levels of college and professional basketball. He is most recognized for his developmental success both on and off the court with many current NBA players, most notably current All-Star and top 75 player of all time, Damian Lillard. Most recently, Coach Beckner has worked closely with several top sports teams, including the Philadelphia 76ers, Texas Tech men's basketball, LSU men's basketball, and Oregon football. He also leads Formula Zero alongside Damian Lillard, which is an elite camp that teaches character, work ethic, and accountability for top college and high school players in the country. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
Coach, first of all, just want to thank you so much for giving up your time, coming on and talking hoops with me, a little culture with me. I've just been able to watch you from afar, follow your stuff on social media, learned a lot from what you do on the court and been able to use that at Faith a little bit. This is an honor for me.
Love it. Yeah, I'm pumped too. You do a heck of a job. I know you asked me a while back ago to do it, and I don't know if it fell through or whatever. But then I saw how many episodes are you up to now? You just celebrated something.
Yeah, put the 200th episode out about a month and a half ago, which if you would have told me 3 years ago that I'd get to that point, I don't know. I just did it originally. I like talking hoops. It was during that COVID time, and I thought, like there's a lot of coaches out there that don't get a platform like this to share about what they do, not just on the court, but off the court. And working with PGC a little bit over the years, my favorite time directing with them was when we got to have that coach's time after all the workouts were done. And I thought, what if I can just do this and then share it? I never dreamt that I'd get coaches like you or other guys on here or last for 200.
That's awesome. I admire that. I listen to a ton of different podcasts and success type stuff, and it's just amazing how many people don't stick with it. So for you to have stuck with it that long says a lot about you and what you're building. And I don't know what the numbers are, but they're like so many people don't get past this number of episodes or don't do it monthly. So when I saw that, big congrats to you.
Wow, man, I appreciate that. And you're right on the money. The consistency with it is probably what is the most challenging. And I kind of have found a good rhythm to where I think it's sustainable. But Tyler Costin was episode number 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And he kind of challenged me like, man, let's just see if you can keep doing this. And so I had to stick it to Tyler for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I love Ty. He's become a good friend of mine too. Lives in Arizona, obviously. He's one of the best.
He really is. Well, Coach, you get to train, and one thing I didn't know, it was about your college background. Not only that did you play, but then also you were at Boise State, Nebraska, and Weber State, and so didn't know about that. But getting to train so many amazing players and be around high achievers, I'm sure you could share some of their daily habits, but I'd love to know your daily habits and how you attack every day.
Yeah, that's something I'm still working on, and I think it's kind of ever, evolving as we grow and mature and get older, and wiser, hopefully as well. We
Yeah.
we come up with different habits. I'd say when I was younger, especially coaching college when I was at Weber State, or then I went to the Oklahoma City Thunder for a year. I wasn't as intentional about habits, and I think that's the most important thing. Not so much like what your habits are, but how intentional you are about them. And I use that same word a lot in player development and define it for players. Simply it's defined being deliberate and doing things on purpose. So, what are those habits that I'm going to be deliberate about and the things that I'm going to do on purpose? It was as simple as one thing when I was coaching college. I would just try to go for a run every day or exercise. But now it's been so important to me, so vital to my success with players or my success as a leader or as a communicator to just have myself in a very, very good place. And one phrase that I try to build off of is it starts with how I start. So all of my habits, I want to start them, based on how I want to start my day or how I'm going to start a workout and that type of preparation. And the three biggest things, I've shared these a little bit when I speak publicly, but I want to be able to read, to like fill my mind, whether that's with a devotional in the morning. Sometimes I could cheat now, and reading is listening to a podcast, maybe on a walk or an audiobook, that way.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of cheating, but reading is one. The next one is moving my body. I've read and studied a lot of Tony Robbins stuff, and kind of, just the biochemistry of our body and how you move or how you warm players up. But just one thing I've actually been doing lately is I've been walking for at least an hour a day, because I think I'm kind of a high speed, high performance individual. And so it's like run, 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 go, go, go. And when you go for a walk and you walk a long ways, you have to walk back the other way. There's like no hurry up, to this thing. So reading, and then again, moving my body, which is now walking. And then the last thing, the habit, and I'm really trying to get better at this right now. And I used to feel super uncomfortable about it faith wise, just sharing any type of my faith, which I know you have a faith and you're a believer as well. But we all screw up or we've all sinned. So I've always thought as a coach or a leader, man, until my life's perfect, I can't share anything like this. And that's not true, as we know. So the one thing I've been trying to do way, way more, I've always been someone who prays, but I really want to pray for those I'm leading. And I've been tweeting it more and more, but pray for your players, pray for your family, just being intentional and deliberate about who you're praying for and what you're praying for them about. Those three habits right now are really not always just putting me in a good place, but one thing I'm fighting for as an individual and as a leader is they're starting to center me more. And whenever you're centered, you could focus more on what's most important, what you're trying to get done. And then you're able to say no to those things that could hurry you up, speed you up, or even distract you from what you're trying to be centered on.
It's a lot of golden nuggets right there. I love that you brought up the intentional word, because I would imagine you see it there. You probably see so many players that are so talented physically and maybe even have some skill, but the intentionality to not just their game, but maybe their preparation and maybe how they live their life, that's off. Would you say that's maybe a big difference between some of those that, man, we watch on TV and we hear, and some that maybe are good enough, but we never hear their names?
Yeah, Matt, that's just not a big difference. Most of the time right now, what I'm finding is that is the main difference. Like if you want to go from good to great or great to elite, our player development philosophy and my player development philosophy that I've had even from back at Weber is you got to be great at what you're good at. So knowing those things that you're good at and maximizing them. But going back to what you just said, if players don't have that intentionality or that clarity in their game or in their habits or their development, it's so freaking hard for them to separate themselves from the competition or to get themselves to their highest level. And I'll give you a great example. We just had the Formula Zero camp. Dame Lillard and I put it on, yep. And we invite 15 top college players, and 10 of those guys are like legit first or second round picks probably. And we invite 15 high school players. And again, 10 of them are probably legit first or second round picks. There was a kid, super talented. I mean, athletic, tall. It was, Matt, this is unbelievable you asked the question, because he talked to me during the middle of camp and he said, Phil, I don't know what I need to really do in my workouts. I'm still trying to find my game or what I'm trying to. Wow. He doesn't have that clarity of who he is and who he's not. And just like me,
how he got to that level, still having that question. That's incredible.
But when you look at him, it's actually not, because he's 6'10". Okay. He could jump out of the gym. He could run like crazy. I mean, we're talking top, 10% talent here, athletically and size wise. And just like me, whether I'm speaking to a company right now or a bunch of entrepreneurs or basketball trainers or trying to get myself better, I need to know who I am and who I'm not. So this kid had told me that, and I'm like, well, yeah, let's define your game. Are you a pick and pop guy? Are you a rim running guy? Are you a create off the dribble guy or create off the catch type of guy? And let's start maximizing those. And here's what's freaking nuts. We have a scout that works with us for Formula Zero, and he breaks down all these kids' games. He used to be an NBA scout. He's phenomenal at this. And he gave a report on each kid, and he sends it right after camp. On this kid, he didn't know we had this conversation. He literally wrote, he doesn't know who he is and what he's good at. He doesn't know what he should be doing and not should. He said floats and doesn't float with his effort, floats with his performance. One game he's trying to shoot pick and pops. The next game he's running to the rim. And I'm just like, man, imagine how much we could help this kid if we just give him clarity and a plan and even teach him how to be a little more, like you said, intentional with his habits.
That intentionality seems like it might lead to, identity, like figuring out who you are. Like you said, you mentioned like being great at what you're good at, and continuing to work on those things. I don't know. Then you hear like another camp of about weaknesses,
Yeah.
and how do you bring those up? So for a high school coach that has a lot of high school players that sometimes more weaknesses than what they're really, really good at. How do you balance that from only maximizing the things or working on the things that they already do well, but bringing up the weaknesses?
Matt, this is why I wanted to do this with you. For one, you're phenomenal. And like we talked about earlier, you've done this over 200 times now. But also, I coached 2 years of high school before coaching college. So I was a JV coach and assistant varsity coach. But then the second thing of, why I wanted to do this, I love the state of Texas. When I was at Weber and Boise, it was my recruiting areas, Dallas and Houston. And there are so many freaking good coaches in Texas. Like, it's sickening how many good coaches you all got. And I know you get athletic periods and more, stuff than a lot, but you guys do a heck of a job. So with that though, strengths versus weaknesses, here's what I think. If you want to go from good to great or great to elite, you got to maximize your strengths. And I always use the example of Damian Lillard, who I still train. I'm here in Portland with him now, worked with him since he was in college. He had a few great skills like shooting the basketball, playing pick and roll, and kind of change pace, change direction, or finishing at the rim. And he was really good at those. So we maximized them to make them great. However, even when he was in college at the low major, mid major level, or even coaching these high school kids, what we've done is we've come up with 5 different skill set absolutes. And I talk about them a lot of the clinics or on our online workshops and different things we do. And what we do, and I think players really understand this. And Matt, I don't care if it's high school or if it's college or the NBA, we could clearly communicate these absolutes to players, these 5 absolutes, and then they've all been in school. I have them grade themselves on it. And if they're not at least getting a grade of a C, which means you're average, which means you're adequate at that skill, you're not good enough anyway. So we want to find those skills, develop those skills that may be weaknesses, but what we have to be willing to live with, whether a high school JV coach or an NBA skill development trainer, if a kid's at a C and that's good enough for his role and where he's at, we need to leave that. But maybe a kid's at a B in another one and we know we could get that to an A, let's get that to an A. And not to jump too much off the subject here, but we're just obviously you went to Baylor, and I go out there and I consult and speak with a bunch of different Division I's or high schools or colleges now, and talk a lot about player development, culture development, staff development. And I think what's missing now, whether you want to improve strengths or whether you want to improve weaknesses, and I've really been working on this a ton as a coach the last 3 years, asking players performance-based questions. How do you feel when you do this? Where would you rate yourself when you do this? Who's your favorite player? Just these type of questions that let you understand their lens of where they see themselves, the reality or of the non-reality of where they're really living, as a player. Because one thing we'll do, and I'll kind of close the answer on this, but maybe it's like our 5 skill set absolutes, I've talked about this before, are ball handling, footwork, change pace, change direction, finishing at the rim, and shooting. So if you and I have a player at, Grapevine Christian and we say, hey, and I'm your assistant, man, we ask that kid, hey, where are you at and change pace, change direction. What grade would you give yourself? A, B, C, D minus, B plus. And that kid's like, I'm an A. But Coach Matt says a C minus, and Coach Phil says a D plus. Well, we're going to have some communication and have some performance-based question and answers to get on the same page, or maybe even just add them all up and be like, all right, we add up these scores. Hey, brother, you're still not where you're supposed to be. So I know I kind of answered that in two parts. One, with the absolutes and what we're trying to do and grading them. But then two, getting those lines of communication open so the player could have a realistic sense of where he is and where he's trying to get to.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here.
If you don't ask those questions, sometimes you don't know how big or small the gap is. The gap between what you see and the gap between where they are, but how they see themselves. And I think asking those types of questions, taking the time is huge, but then having the evaluation tool that you're talking about, because I don't like telling them, you know what, you're a little bit better. I see some change. Maybe this, maybe a little bit more, a little less. Oh, that's just right. All of those things are so they're vague, and they're almost like in the moment feel that can't. It's harder for a player to replicate that. Like take their arc. If they're a little flat, and I say, hey, give it a little more up and at, a little more up, a little more up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. When I turn around, it's most likely going to go right back to where it was before. So I like a scale like that, but then with grading, but then the question method to fill that gap, or at least know where the gap is. I think that's huge.
Agree. The number one complaint I get from NBA guys, and I get to work with a lot of them now, is exactly what you just said of getting their shot up. They said they'll work with a pregame shooting coach or a video guy on their staff, and again, some people have pegged me one of the better shooting coaches in the country, or whatever we do that it works, which is great to hear. But I think sometimes you just got to be a better teacher, and that's why a lot of high school coaches are really, really good coaches, because they know how to teach and they know how to get guys to retain and they know how to get guys to communicate, because all these NBA guys complain. I'm like, well, what does your coach tell you? And he says, get it up, get it up. Well, what does get it up mean? Or how much higher do I get it up? So I think you hit the nail on the head.
I struggle sometimes with knowing maybe how far to push a progression, because, and I think colleges, pro teams, they all have a scale of the best down to the worst. Now, the worst at a pro team, the worst at a college team, still phenomenal. But you start to get down to, and I'm at a small Christian private school where I've got some pretty good players at the top, and then a large middle, but then there's some at the bottom that they're bless their heart, we don't cut. Yeah. And they're just learning to play. So there is this idea, and it's usually me and about 28 to 30 kids in the gym by myself for 43 minutes a second period. So PGC helped me a lot learn how to coach an entire gym and make them all feel like I'm there for them, and I'm getting individual touches, zoom out, bring them in, all that. Yeah. But I struggle with knowing how far do I push, because I want my best players to feel like this is making them better, but I don't want my weaker players or newer players to feel like, golly, like I have no idea what we're doing right now. Where do you feel like how do I be better at developing both groups almost at the same time?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question, because number one, so many people, when they hit me for drills or a shooting workout or the workout I just did with Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons this morning, the number one thing they want is, and I think maybe PGC says this too a little bit, but it's like the prescription. how much you are doing something. Like this drill, how many times do we go? How many seconds are on the clock? How many reps do
Yeah.
we go? And Matt, this is where I've changed a lot over the years, coaching high school, coaching college, coaching professionally. I've done it at every level. Is like, I don't think you could be a prisoner to the prescription and be a great coach. So for you to fill that gap that you want to now, we have to remember that coaching and development is an art and it's not just a science. So many people are like, I need to do this to this to this to this. It's not always like that. Dame this summer, here's a great one for you. He's given me so much crap about this. And actually, here you go. So like here's his workout from like 2 days ago. I always write them on these little pieces of paper. I've done it for years. I save every player workout. I save every single one. Here's my notepad that I write them on. Every day I have them from years and years in the house, just in folders upon folders. And what I like to do with players, and to answer your question, how do you fill that gap? Is one, I show them what we're going to do that day and what we're trying to get accomplished that day. Because there's an art to communication, there's an art to coaching. Where Dame's giving me crap like a month ago, he goes, "Why do you keep showing me this?" He goes, "You change the plan almost every day." Because how his mind works, he is such a special individual. Matt, he counts every rep. He knows every make, every score. Like he's psychotic with like his level of detail. Like I could barely coach and count at the same time. And no, that was 7 makes. No, that was 8 makes. Like he knows everything. So whether you got a guy like Damian Lillard, who's absolutely maniacal, high level, going to be a Hall of Famer, or we got some guys who could barely walk and chew gum at the same time. And what you described to me actually reminded me of my year in the G League, because we have some high level G League players. You have some pretty good middle players. Then you always have a few guys that were shuffling in and out of the G League. And again, that was 7, 8 years ago, who weren't quite good enough and they were just a body. They couldn't even keep up, in practice or games sometimes. So what I would say is if you go in as a coach to keep it competitive or engaging enough for the top guys, but we want to keep those lower level guys confident and engaged enough. So we want competitive and engaged along with confident and engaged. I think we have to have a plan walking in. And here's the separator of what we're trying to get accomplished just that day. I have a plan for the whole week. It sounds like you're a super organized guy. You'll have a plan for your high school program for the next 3 months. But for that day, during that 42 minutes, what are we trying to get accomplished? And here, Matt, and here's where I get super pumped about development. What I think we could do with players of all levels, and this is super huge, and we just did it at Formula Zero. If they're not quite good enough at that skill yet, two areas that they could trim down a little bit or not do as much is the level of speed they train with and the level of force they train with. And I talk about this all the time at clinics because when I got to OKC, one of the assistant coaches, he said, "Phil, the best guards in the NBA, they play with speed and they play with force." And where a lot of high school and college coaches really screw up, and I screwed up the same way when I coached at those levels, we try to get everyone to do everything fast, 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 fast.
Yeah.
But they don't get them to play hard, hard, like harder jabs, harder rips, harder pounds. So you could have a ball handling change pace, change workout. One thing we just released, Matt, I'll send it to you for free after this. We just put out our whole skill library. Everyone's wanted our core foundational drills and progressions. And what's so cool about them is they're super simple. You could do them at every level. But like the kids at Grapevine Christian who are really struggling, they just can't do them as fast or as forceful. Now, your other kids maybe are at basket one. We got to have speed on this. We should be making mistakes. We should almost be falling over with our chin over our knees when we do this. And so now we're practicing at a rate that's equal to or quicker than the game that will pay off. Because when we send out that skill library, I don't know how many my assistant added up. Maybe there's 40, 45 drills in it, Matt, just something like that. But the key is there's almost 100 teaching points. And whether your kids are good enough or not, or my players are good enough or not, they could still at least understand and try to execute the teaching points. Like chin up, chest up is a huge teaching point for us when we do ball handling or when we do change pace, change direction. Your chin has to be up, your chest has to be up. Even though you could barely walk and chew gum at the same time, damn it, you better have your chin and chest up while we're doing this stuff. So I think that level of coaching comes down to more of an art and again, going back to your word of intentionality, instead of, again, being a prisoner to the rules or being a prisoner to the score clock, or prisoner, like I said, to the prescription of what the workout requires.
Coach, you nailed it. And I'm so glad you used the word art, because I feel like the feel, like there's the
Oh,
practice plan that you have and where you'd like to go with the amount of time and the amount of space and players. There's that, the physical aspect to the workout, or a practice plan. Like I chuckle just kind of thinking, I mean, I'm only 18 years in, so not like, super long time, but I used to be a kind of a slave to my practice plan. It'd be
yeah.
4 pages long. It'd be down to every minute. And I still admire the guys that do that, but I would be struggling with the feeling of like, golly, I don't think we're ready to go yet to that next thing. But the time is now. We got to move, guys. I have this plan. Gosh darn it, we're going to stick to this plan. And then over the time, my practice plan began to dwindle down to where it was fewer and fewer things, but giving myself the freedom to flow more, to
Yeah.
stay, or to cut short. And to any of those coaches that do feel like, I'm a high school coach and I've got 30 guys, and man, I've got 3 or 4 little Timmies like we were talking about on that court. I think one thing I've tried to go to them, and maybe you can tell me I'm wrong if I am, but I wanted the idea of like, I'm going to train everybody like they're our star player,
Yes.
because I wanted all of them to feel like they're getting the good stuff, right? They're
Mhm.
getting the things that will help all my best guys get better. But like you said, you got the skeleton or the things that they all need to be able to do. But then the feel of it or the art is, I'm going to go around to the better, some of those guys, and give them something to go a little bit farther. Hey,
Yes.
now let's go stride stop, inside hand stretch
Oh,
finish, while the
yes,
other guys are still
absolutely.
just trying to get your feet. But that's the part where, like, if I was trying to just, this is what we're doing, next check, I may not be able to get deep enough. So sorry for rambling there, but
No,
the art and feel, I think, is huge.
it's absolutely huge. And the phrase I say, and a lot of coaches say it, as well, you can't teach feel. Like you can't, like you have to experience it and get out there and do it. And if the kids are gassed, you don't just go to the next drill, because you got to have some feel. Let them get a drink or let them huddle up. And one of the best I've been around at this, Bryce Drew at Grand Canyon brings me, I live in Tempe, but he brings me out most years to speak to the team and watch practice. And he'll be like, Phil, here's my practice plan. He's like, but most of the time I don't follow it. He's like, I'm a feel guy. And here's what I would say though, Matt, this is good. Something I've started doing the last few years. And I would love for coaches to hear this. And again, I kind of just stumbled upon it, but I think, some things are great because the players love them and the players give you affirmation. You don't have to have another coach telling you, oh, this was so good, or you spoke at a clinic and everyone gives you a pat on the back. But two things we've done within what you're talking about. So even the walk and chew gum guys who can't, do it, like they're struggling, or one, we are gonna, and I think it's a blessing and a curse for me. I do coach everyone the same. One of the guys who worked for me for a couple years, he goes, Phil, you know what I love about you? I said, oh boy, what's that? He goes, whether you're talking to Doc Rivers, who I worked for, in Philly for a couple years as a consultant, Damian Lillard, the 17-year-old you fostered, or the kid working at Circle K, you just treat them all the same. You talk to, like, it's just, hey, we're all, so it's a blessing and a curse. But here's what I've found, whether it's an elite performer or the kid who's struggling, Matt, these two things are really, really good. One, almost every coach or trainer, once you get it right, they go on to the next progression. Or if you get it wrong, they make you do it again. Oh, that one was wrong. Do it again before we go. Oh, it was wrong. Do it again. So you know what I did? And I'm not the smartest guy in the world. So I try to, and again, goes back to our be better, be different phrase and trying to create
Yeah.
different competitive advantages. But I'm like, hold on. If everyone does this, let's do the opposite. Because usually when you follow the crowd, you get lost in it. Like we've all heard that. You follow the crowd, you're probably going to get lost in it. I don't want to get lost in the crowd. So when a player finally got something right and it was awesome and we're high-fiving, now what we do, from Damian Lillard to Anthony Simons, Jacoby Walter, who played at Baylor, he's flying to Portland today. He'll be here with us tonight to shoot. I make them do it again. We want to repeat what we do well. Like, that was awesome. Do it again. Now we start to build confidence. Now we're different than all these other people who just, all right, you got it right, next thing. And players love that because they could feel it biomechanically. They could feel it with their body and ball. And then I'm like, do it again and repeat that feeling. Boom, they do it again. Repeat it again. Now all of a sudden, maybe we got 3 or 4 extra reps. And yeah, it took 2 minutes off the clock, but the player's confident, the player's more reliable with their skill level, the player's moving better. We want to do that. The other thing we've done, and literally, and this is why Dame makes fun of me about changing his plan, when we have a focal point, at least one main area. So like one of them for Dame this offseason has been making more mid-range shots. Because and he doesn't have to shoot a ton of them. We know analytically it's not a great shot, but we think last year he just left so many of them on the table. Like he got to his spot around the free throw line or the elbow and it was in and out, or he missed it short. And those are shots with the way him and Giannis get defended. He has to be able to take and make those in tough games or in the playoffs. Like those are the only shots he's getting, and he has to make the defense pay. We don't need a role player to make those, but we need Dame to make those. So when Dame a few times this offseason has really got rolling from the mid-range, and here's what I would challenge coaches with, and just like you were talking about with either group, when you catch momentum, keep riding the momentum then. I don't care if we do it another 20 minutes in the workout, that 20 minutes, he rides that momentum that day, might be better than 10 minutes on Thursday, 10 minutes on Friday, 10 minutes on Saturday. And in a team setting, maybe it's shell drill and closeouts, maybe it's transition offense, 3-on-2, 2-on-1, whatever it may be. If they're productive, like, and Phil Jackson used to talk about momentum the most with the Lakers and the Bulls and all his spirituality, and like he'd talk about that all the time. So like, why not ride that momentum, build upon it more instead of you and not trade that time for time later that just might be average or inadequate. Does that make sense? So those two things we started to do a ton, and the players love it.
Totally makes sense and super convicting for me. And what I love about doing this is there's always at least one thing that I am in the middle of the talk and I realize, golly, I really needed to hear that. And I'm sure in our time there'll be more than just one thing. In most talks there are, but that was I I do that. That's right. I wanted to almost stop you, but like, Coach, that's me. Like,
There you
I'm the
go.
guy with even my own son here at Faith. We'll be working and he's just struggling with a finish. Maybe the spin, maybe just hitting the board at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Miss, miss, miss. Keep going, keep going. And he gets it. I'm like, all right, next thing. And it's like, what a dumb thing to do because like the odds of him, like from that one rep. Okay, if I just take the 5 and 4 of them were wrong or off the mark, needed some more adjustments, and he gets one right. Do I really think that the 80%, like, which one is he going to do again in the
Yeah.
future if we stop right there? He's going to do the 80%, not the 20%.
Yeah.
So I've got to go longer, deeper to change that math to where now all of a sudden, okay, we're at 50-50. Oh, man, hey, we're 60-40 doing it
Yeah.
right.
There you go.
And then
Yeah.
maybe the next workout when we hit it again, it's 80-20, maybe the other flip. But what are the odds that he just magically becomes confident and good at something when we embrace the struggle. I celebrate the try, like Gannon Baker
Yeah.
says, and we're moving through it. But I stop short at not only mastery, but man, I'm feeling good about what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. We always say this. It's our job. I tell players this all the time. It's their job to feel it. It's my job to teach it. You get out there and feel it and repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. We'll keep teaching you. We'll stick with it. And even going back to your whole practice plan, like you just said about Gannon, who's a good friend of mine as well. But one of our player standards about being a professional or being on time or hardworking or committed. Those are kind of our 4 standards of anyone who wants to work with us. But like we always say, we don't coach effort, which most coaches say, right? But we put a comma on that. We say we don't coach effort, comma, we applaud mistakes. Because we had 30 of the top players in the country, like we just talked about. And we're doing walking pounds, pounding the ball super hard with the level of speed and force that they're not used to. And it gave me goosebumps at camp because we've had a lot of these coaches for 3 years now at camp and they understand our standards. And kids lost the ball And man, I promise you, four coaches just started like, there you go. You're dribbling it so hard you lost the ball. But guess what? By day 3 of camp, now we've done this ball handling progression 5 different times. They're not losing the ball. But we had to applaud the mistake and get them to work through that day 1 and day 2.
You made a great point too about when you have momentum within a practice, not to stop it. Like one of my things is like joy. Let's have joy be all throughout our gym and everything that we do. Joy within the process and of making mistakes, but in practice, I'm thinking back to times where maybe we're playing a small sided game or a 3 possession game or a game where they have to win on a certain order of operations,
Yeah, yeah.
and they do it and they have to celebrate like they won, and they're having so much joy, like, hey, that's awesome. All right, next thing, let's go. What if, coach, I would have just let's run it back. Hey,
Yeah.
fellas, you want to play that again? Like, get their ideas on it, because you already talked about asking their performance-based questions. What if
Yeah.
we ask, man, hey, that we've just played 3-on-3 with no dribbles, a little bit of a grind, fellas. You good with that, or do we want to do it again?
No
Like,
kidding.
golly, like give
Matt,
more ownership
let
to
me
them.
ask
That's
let me
huge.
ask you this question because I learned some of this from working with Evan Turner. Played 10 years in the league, National Player of the Year at Ohio State, one of the best
Yeah.
humans ever been around. He had so many great things because he played for Brad Stevens, worked for Brad in Boston, played for Thad Matta. He's been around all these great coaches, and I trained him for a year at the end of his career. And selfishly, it was like a clinic every day. I'm like, I have Evan Turner notes of things he would say or teach me. I'm like,
Wow.
type that to myself. But what I learned from him is like, if you want to know you're really good at what you do, or if your players are enjoying it, or if that drill works, the players will tell you for the most part. And I've coached for 15 years, and it took a 10-year pro to tell me that. And now, granted, I know players aren't going to like conditioning or defensive slides. Hey, that's where we're still the adult or the parent, and all discipline and all that type of stuff. But he was like, if you want to know this drill's really good, ask your players if they like it or not. Now, granted, if they don't like it because it's hard, that's a different story. So here's what I would ask you, and I wish I would have done this coaching at the college level, and we did it a little bit at Boise. But when you have momentum, let's say you're playing Friday night, okay, high school
Yeah.
game Friday night, that team runs a heck of a zone in your league or in your district, whatever it may be. And you don't have a game all week, right? You don't have a game. So you get Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday's light, Thursday's a practice, Friday's the game. You're going to work on zone offense all week, right? Preparing for that zone. When you catch fire against that zone, even if it's the scout team, as a leader and as a coach, you say, well, it's just scout team. All right, let's get to the next thing, or let's put in another quick hitter. Why not let the kids just keep peppering that zone and playing and learning how to make plays and cutting? And because here's my question to you: isn't like 30 minutes of great work on a Tuesday better than 10 minutes, part of my language, of shitty work on Wednesday and Thursday?
No
Like
doubt.
screw the 10 minutes because
Yeah.
they're just stymied or don't
Yeah.
want to do it or what. So, like, have you ever been through that, or do you think I'm on base with that? I just think there's so much more where I'd rather, just like in business and working with entrepreneurs now, I want a great return on my investment. So, if I'm going to put 30 minutes in of zone preparation this week, do I have to have 10 every day, or do I want maybe 20 great minutes one day and 10 really good minutes the next? Don't even do it the other day. I'd
Yeah.
love your opinion on that. What you think?
Well, yeah. Well, I think you're right on the money, but I think it goes back to the almighty practice plan that we have. Like, I, well, who was it? Maybe Tyler Costin has said you got to look at what you did last year at this time. You got to take 10% out. Like
Yeah.
you got to keep taking things out. I think what would keep a lot of coaches, and maybe I was like that at some point, from being able to ride that wave is what all other things we have to do that day.
No
But
question. Yeah.
but then
Yeah.
again, I really like to talk with coaches about freedom, not just freedom in play and giving players more options and what does Chris Oliver say? He says opportunities than musts.
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like this is an
Yeah.
opportunity for us to stay in this, get deeper. We're gonna hit it. I was planning on hitting it the next couple days anyway. Let's just stay and have the freedom to push things to the side.
No
You know,
question.
like don't have that worry of golly, I'm a bad coach because we didn't go over our out of bounds plays again. Like think of the things that we spend our time on that they already get. Instead of doing 5-on-0 of shell again, let's play more and let's learn more from that. But
Yeah.
I mean, when all those breakdown drills, when you feel like they're the most important thing, then I think you are reluctant to give up that time.
I agree. And I know it goes into one of the questions, you said you wanted to probably talk about like what makes what we do different, here, like
Yeah.
training and whatnot. And we could talk about that. But I think so much of what you're saying is what I struggled with as a coach. Whether it's you feel so good about breakdown drills or we got to do more shell or more out of bounds. But when you look at it intrinsically, and I don't mind, sharing some of my coaching story or my personal background. I grew up with a super tough, broken, traumatic family life. So I am a kid. Think about this, and I'm going somewhere, especially for coaches, listen to this podcast, and any of them could reach out to me anytime. I don't mind sharing or trying to help. And again, I'm still working on this stuff. I got a meeting with my therapist this week, man. But I grew up this goes back to what you were saying, but think about it. I grew up with a ton of uncertainty and a ton of chaos. That was the environment because of family struggles and whether it was violence, drug abuse, whatever. So when I came home from sixth grade through high school, I didn't know what I was walking into. There's a lot of uncertainty and chaos. And Tony Robbins talks about this a lot too with like six humans needs. There's six human needs we all need, or we all need to feel a certain way, but we want to be loved. We want to be affirmed, we want to be accepted, all these different things. So if Phil Beckner can get really good at controlling my environment and controlling my circumstances, I now avoid the chaos and the uncertainty I grew up with. So what do you think I am? I'm a control freak. I am type A, Matt, like you would believe. My house is clean, cleaners come over, my laptop, my notes, like so therefore as a coach, when we want to feel secure or we want to feel affirmed or prepared and we don't want that uncertainty or chaos to screw us up so we lose or we're called a loser or we're letting people down or letting our family down or our players down, what do we try to do? And I've had to work on this a lot personally and professionally. We try to control outcomes. Same thing in player development. Like we try to control that player and their outcomes. And whether it's freedom of decision making, freedom of development, all of those different things, we do those extra out of bounds plays because we think we're controlling an outcome. And we think like we're developing a sense of security in ourselves that we develop that box. And if we do that, we won't lose the game because of that. Because on the other side of all these emotions, what drives so much of us, and I'm not trying to go too deep here, but it's fear. It's
Yeah,
fear.
no doubt.
And we could say, well, I'm not scared. I'm not. No, most people are scared of dying. Most people are scared of not being loved. Most people are scared of being judged. Most people are scared of failing. Most people are scared they're going to get to that big high school game on Friday night and lose and say, I knew we should have spent 10 more minutes on zone. That ain't it. And like I said, sharing a little bit of my stuff, I grew up a certain way. So I definitely try to control to an extreme level and even an unhealthy level at times. And that's where you get into whether it's coaching development, player development, human development, all this stuff that we're all trying to grow and get better at. That's where when you start taking a deep dive, you could really, really, really start making some progress. And like you said earlier, not so much staying in the gray area because the gray area, we know that's where the mediocre people live. We want to live on one side or the other. Hey, we don't want to be lukewarm. That's biblical too, right? Like we don't want to be lukewarm. You're lukewarm, we're going to spit you out. We don't want to stay in the gray. So, man, if you really want to accelerate progress and you really want to get better, I think you start looking at some of these intrinsic things of, like you said, and say I'm coaching you 8 years ago, we'd be laughing at ourselves. But I'm like, Matt, why is your damn practice plan 4 pages long? It ain't because you're trying to give the coaches the best chance to win. It's because you're trying to control an outcome or you're trying to make sure you're not fearful. Like, sorry, I get passionate, but those are things that like I'm trying to dive into, whether it's with the college team, the pro guys I train, high school teams I speak to, whatever it may be. those are the things we're trying to do from a deeper level to really figure out some of the progress we can make and the results we desire.
What's up, Coach? Are you looking for a way to elevate your off-season skill development? Well, look no further. With the Bology app, you can build a workout with our library or create your own content. Send that workout to your players, and then your players complete the workout by recording their session on their phones. You can monitor and encourage competition with our leaderboards for every workout. Bology offers player development solutions in the palm of your hands. Get your team started today by going to Bology.com for more info.
Coach, that's why you and I are doing this. You have great drills. I've watched a lot of them, not all of them, a lot of them, and I definitely can learn things every time. But that is, to me, that's the small part.
Yeah.
Like what you just talked about is the big part. And thank you for sharing your story. I really appreciate that and being vulnerable with that. And I don't want stability. That's what I thought
Yeah.
you were, as a young kid, that's what you were craving, right? Like a lot of us crave. And these kids, my college coach, my first college coach, I had no clue who we were going to get every day.
Yeah.
Hard to live in that world. I don't want my high school players to, when they're done, and most of them will never play in college, to look back at grapevine faith basketball with a lack of joy, or that my fear of losing
Yeah.
was dictating everything that we do. And I think if coaches will take time to think back to the 4 or 5 biggest moments that they regret, the time that they said something that they wish they could take back, that they did not make a courageous choice with their team, all of those negatives, they usually boiled to the fear of losing. And
Yeah.
Shawnee Harley was, I've mentioned this episode a ton. She was a Canadian Olympic coach on the women's side,
Yeah.
and now she runs Winning Matters. But
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I was sitting across from her like this, and she talked about fear of losing, and I just felt like, golly, like that's what's been crippling me from really having this freedom with my players to enjoy the process and really change how I talk to them and how I treat them. You talked about a lot of fears, and all of those. I think the fear of losing for me is the one that, yeah, kind of crippled me in a lot of ways, from going back to even something of why not stay in that drill with that, or that game where they're smiling, having fun, and they're feeling it and they're enjoying being with each other. Why am I
Yeah.
moving on? Because of that fear of losing.
I agree. Yeah. The one thing we've addressed that, I could share with you, my mentor Rod Olson has helped me with this a ton. And I worked for a guy, Tim Miles at Nebraska, and you've heard this, but so many things that are destroying coaches or destroying programs, or even, especially in my world now, player development, is fear, worry, or doubt. They're so fearful, or they're so worried, or they're living in such doubt. And Rod Olson, he wrote a great book called The Legacy Builder. He's a Christian guy, great leadership book though. And he always talks about every player or every person you're leading, and even us, Matt and Phil Beckner. Even when we get off this podcast, we will perform better or feel better if we feel safe, if we feel secure, and if we feel significant. And I just think that's the antidote for fear, worry, and doubt. It's safe, secure, significant. You're either going to live with one of those three or all three at once. But man, if we know the antidote, like that's what we should be striving for, as individuals, and even helping our young kids get to a place where they know how to get themselves to feel safe, secure, and significant.
And we got to make sure that we don't project the way we're feeling onto our players. You've heard this before, like you can't coach what you don't possess.
Yes.
I think if you don't have safety, security, Frosty's book, Make the Big Time Where You Are, like that really helped. That book helped me with being at a smaller school. Like, I always saw Don Meyer talk about it doesn't matter where you coach, it matters why you coach. I get that, but I'm also at a super small school. Like, does this really matter? Like, who cares what I'm doing here? But first of all, God does. And when I'm before Him one day, it'll be, what did you do with the people that I put in your life, right in front of you? What did you do with those people? How did you influence them? How did you lead them to me? But from just a basketball standpoint, I can't coach with joy or show or demand joy from them if I don't have that every single day. And whatever the fear is that's holding me back. And I'm not discounting coaches that are in a position where like when it's win or you're fired.
Yeah.
I get that. That's a tough spot. And there are a lot of high school coaches in Texas and all over the country that those are the expectations. I happen to be at a school where if I disciple them the right way, obviously we can't get blasted every game. But if there's a good plan, if kids are getting
Yeah.
better and they feel like basketball is not actually the first thing, I think I could be here for a long time, even without winning state or having a ton of wins. But some of
Yeah.
those coaches are in those positions. But I do still think that the way to actually have the success is for winning to not be the thing that's driving you every single day or not. Now, that doesn't mean a lack of excellence, but at least the fear of losing isn't what's driving you every day.
No kidding. And Matt, like it's almost like we need to jump on another podcast right now with that topic because I'm serious. It's so important. Golly, like I want to just give a few examples for you and the listeners because what you just talked about is probably maybe one of my biggest struggles professionally, worried about whether it's winning or results or money. And these are things people don't talk about enough. Like,
Mhm.
tell your players, like, yeah, I'm fearful sometimes. Or, yeah, I've like that vulnerability, opens up doors. And Craig Rochelle
Yeah.
said, this great leadership guy, great pastor. I just talked to a player about this after Formula Zero camp. He really shared some personal stuff with me and he was almost embarrassed about it. Top kid in the country, great player, in tears, shared some personal stuff. And I said, like, bro, what you just displayed to me is strength. That's what that is. And Craig Rochelle said, we impress people with our strengths, but we connect with them through our weaknesses. He shared his weaknesses. And as coaches, we could alleviate some of this stress or this pressure and that's why like each year I know a lot of people do coaches mentorship groups now or trainers want to do them. I've done one for about 3 years now, Matt, maybe four, and we do ours during the freaking season because coaches aren't connected. They're isolated. They don't get ideas. They don't get to share stuff. So we start ours in like August or September and it goes through February. And people miss meetings, have to watch recordings. But it's because we need to talk about these fears, these insecurities, these doubts that are crushing people. And here's what I wanted to say and what I really want to share with you and like any coach or any player struggling with this. I get to train Damian Lillard, who is one of the biggest assassins in the NBA. He will like rip your throat out, tell you about it, hit a game winner, not fearful. I'm just like, if I had half the self belief he did, I don't know where I'd be in life. I'd be some millionaire owning a building in New York. I don't know. But his self belief is crazy. So 2 years ago, we started a pro camp with him. There's 25 NBA players out there, and all the young guys wanted to ask him one thing, Matt. Guess what they wanted to ask him? They asked him, how do you hit all of these game winners? Like, how do you have that mindset? Because, they have Dame
Clutch
time.
factor.
Yeah. How do you have
Yeah.
that? And he said, one, he goes, I know my work is real. He knows when I look at people, I could look in their eyes and tell whether they've worked as hard as me or not. I know how hard I train, what I really do. Some people act like they do, but they fake it. And deep down, they know they're a fraud or they know they faked it. So one, he said he could see that. But two, and here's what, like, golly, if someone would have poured this into me in the college level, I would have been such a better coach. If we could pour this into more coaches and more players now, and you could tell how fired up I'm getting to instill this in the guys I'm mentoring and leading. The second thing he said, he goes, I don't care what anybody says about me or what anybody writes about me if I miss. Matt, it was like pin drop in the room.
Yep. Yeah.
Because everyone else is fit. Well, what are they going to say if I miss? What are they going to write about me if they miss? What is it? And he said, I don't care. And because of that, he has surrendered the outcome. He makes more game winners. He's put in the work like people have not, though. I mean, I get that. And so here's what I say, and it's part of Be Better, Be Different stuff when we talk. It's one of our separators. We have a game plan we take teams through. And then once you follow the game plan, we go through the separators. How do you separate yourself once you follow the game plan? And then now that you follow the game plan and you've separated yourself, now we have guardrails set up in our life to keep us on track. But our last separator, and this is so, and I don't know if we'd get into this, and if I'm rambling, I'm sorry. I think it's important.
Keep going, man. This is awesome.
But everyone wants to know what all these high performers do, and they're always perfect, and they always have great habits. Matt, it's such BS. They fail. They're broken. Dame struggles too. I struggle. I've worked with Giannis. I've worked with Embiid. I could name drop all day, but I'm not trying to name drop for the sense of ego or status because level does not matter to me. High school, college, NBA. I don't care if you're a Grapevine Christian and you don't have to win any games, or if you're at Duncanville High School and if you don't win district, you're fired next year. I don't care. But here's what matters. Every individual trying to be successful at some point has gotten punched in the face, literally or figuratively. If you study boxing champions, and I've done this, they take over 300 punches a match and still win. They got punched over 300 times at minimum, and they still win. It wasn't a perfect match. A lot of them got the hell beat out of them. They got punched over and over and over. So our last separator is you could take a punch. And what we always tell these guys, and I failed at this miserably, and I'm trying to be great at it now as a leader. The people who are the most successful, they could take a punch because they're not afraid to lose. They surrendered the outcome. And we always say this, and I tell every kid this I train with now, I tell every coach, when next talk I go to Baylor, I'm going to tell the Baylor Bears this. The most dangerous guy in a fight is the one who has nothing to lose. And I always tell the guys, like I go, raise your hand if you've ever been to a bar. None of the players want to raise their hand. I'm like, some of the coaches do, like the guy you don't want to fight in a bar fight is the dude sitting over there whose truck doesn't start right half the time. He works a job he don't like. His wife or daughter don't talk to him anymore. If you pick a fight with that dude, he's probably going to whoop your butt because he has nothing to lose. He don't care anymore. And that's the same thing with Dame hitting those game winners. He's like, I don't have anything to lose. I've put in the work. I've surrendered the outcome. And you want to crush fear, worry, doubt, anxiety, pressure, comparison, distraction, all these damn things we struggle with. We got to talk about them. Number one, admit we're human. Join the mentorship group, get through it, to talk about it. And then two, surrender the damn outcome. No, we're going to have to take a punch and keep fighting. Sorry, I get passionate, man, but that stuff's important.
Was good. It was so good. Sometimes I forget that I'm on, a call. I'm just listening. It's so awesome, and I'm so glad that you said. I literally wrote down a team's not afraid to lose. It's such a powerful idea, but like Doug Novak talked about, his first meeting of the year with his team was, guys, what are we going to do when we lose?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So counter to what the majority of teams are going to do is they're undefeated to start the year, and they're talking about as if they will be undefeated and that everything that they ever wanted will come true, when the 99% is that the opposite's going to happen. Injuries, sickness, egos, chemistry issues, culture issues, culture breakers, all these things, losses are going to happen. Sometimes you just play somebody that's hot, like last year in our last playoff game. I loved the team. We overachieved, and they I don't think they were afraid to lose, and we played well. We could have beat that team. They just played better. Yeah. Like sometimes that's going to happen. But Doug says, hey guys, how are we going to handle when we lose? The most dangerous team, the most dangerous players are the ones that aren't afraid of that. And not to go too far into that story, I can't do the finger.
Yeah.
That story with the leftovers is, Coach, we had 6 scholarship players. Coach Drew's first year, he was 32 years old. We weren't allowed to be in postseason play. Hypothetically, if we had been really good, we weren't allowed. And we knew that before going into the season. So there's no carrot dangling at all. And somewhere, Coach Drew had a huge part of it. Somewhere along the line, the 6 of us decided, guys, let's just go out and try to mess up their night. Nobody thinks we can be competitive anyway. Let's go out there. And you know what? We're at Kansas and we're down 4 with 10 minutes left, laughing at the free throw line together. Like, can you believe it? Like, we're in this thing. We became super dangerous because we had nothing to lose. That's an extreme example. So if you don't have that environment that you're in, how do you cultivate that with your team? You talk about losing. You talk about the fact that the sun's going to come up the next day if we do lose this. we're still going to care about each other. My love for you as a player doesn't increase when we win, and it doesn't decrease when we lose. I think
Yeah.
that's how you maybe get there.
You have to communicate those things. And here's what, and again, learning from players, you know what it does? Like, I think it shortens losing streaks and it shortens slumps when you've already talked about it. Kevin Eastman said this. He worked with Ray Allen when he was with the Celtics, and he'd always take him, to the arena 3 hours early. Him and Ray Allen would ride in a cab. And I remember getting Kevin Eastman's blog. I still have them all saved. He'd write these really cool things. And there was one called Be There Before You Get There. And he's like, Ray Allen makes these shots because he's already been there mentally, win, lose, or draw, shooting there. So even before he gets the ball, he's already been there and played it out. And here's something, I don't want to say this to sound like we have all the answers or like we're arrogant by any means, but I swear on everything, Matt. And just like one of your questions, what makes what you guys do so different? Here's what I would say. The first thing with development and training, and you even got me fired up about your son. Like, I'd love to come do a session with him and just show you not just our drills. Like I said, I'll send you our library. But one thing we do with our players, and I worked with Oregon football, and Mario Cristobal will talk about this all the time. We're going to fight for the space between their ears harder than anyone else in the country. We're going to fight for that space between their ears harder than anyone else in the country. The second thing we do, and I do training these guys now, and I think 90% of trainers, player development coaches, or coaches in general are preparing them to succeed. They're preparing them to win. That's great. But if you're spending all of the time doing that, we think you're wrong. We want to prepare them to fail. So as soon as they fail and they walk in the locker room, they already have a predetermined response to that failure. They're not crushed. They're not broken. Or like Dame says, some of you guys, your foundation is so weak, you're shakable, or even heaven forbid, you're breakable. And we don't want to be shakable or breakable. So here's what I tell guys, and I swear this is so true. Like the young kid, Jacoby Walter, who played at Baylor, he's actually arrived in Portland by now. We're going to shoot in 2 hours as soon as we're off this podcast. He knows I am preparing him to be successful for the Raptors. But part of that we are going to communicate is what happens if he does not, if he misses a bunch of shots. And I go, Jacoby, I told him this right before Summer League. I said, there's going to be a chance in Summer League, but most likely during the season, you're going to go like 1 for 10 from three or like 1 for 10 from the field. Matt, you're laughing. You already know it, but like he looked at me and he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, why? Because I'm a rookie? I go, no, because you're human, because everybody does in the NBA. Dame is a top 75 player all time. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He will go 2 of 10 this year. It happens. There's 80. And he's like, oh. And Matt, I swear to God, it happened in Summer League. He goes like 2 of 14. But he's like, I'm ready to bounce back. You told me it was coming. I'm getting in the gym. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my foundation shooting in, and I'm going to crush tomorrow. So when you say, like, are you really that different? I'm not saying we're different arrogantly, but we're going to fight for the space between their ears harder than anyone in the country. And we're not just going to prepare them to succeed. We're going to prepare them to fail because we know that's what competition does. And that's what sports does. It's going to put our back against the wall at some point, and we're not always going to be successful.
And thank you for that, because I'm going to write that on my whiteboard here for kind of some ideas for the year. And even this is my son's senior year, and there is something about that kind of closing that chapter with him. There's a lot of guys on this team and within our gym this year that every player is special. I give every player a Tuesday text for the rest of their lives, like when they come through, and so to keep that connection. But there are always some, that, man, maybe they just worked their way in even a little bit more. You just had this connection with more, or maybe there was something in their life that, you felt like, okay, God, I see why you put him with me, but fighting for that space between, I think as coaches, if we were going to do a pie chart, at what part of the pie chart is the skill and what they can do for us on the floor, and what part of the pie chart is between their ears?
Yeah.
As far as my emphasis, and the amount of questions I ask and the time I spend. And you started this whole talk off with being intentional. That was the word we started at the very beginning with your daily walk. but I think I need to be intentional with the space in between their ears, not
Yes.
just throw, and that maybe we're getting into that culture word, but not just throwing a quote at the beginning of practice, reading it. Hey, that's culture for today. Let's go. Let's work on things that are really important now. But
Yeah.
taking the time, whether it's with individual meetings, when you see, and you're right on the money. What's so beautiful about any sport, but maybe a sport like ours is with shooting games, with performance, you see them at their lowest points. And
Yeah.
when they're there, do we just throw out a one liner to them? Or do
Yeah.
we take the time to put our arm around, dig deeper? Because this is, if they think it's just about basketball, then that's our fault, right?
Agree. And there's so much to unpack in that. And I would encourage you, and I would ask you, you got my number now to encourage me, especially like middle of the season when we get tired, like be willing to invest the energy that it takes. Because it's so hard to just keep giving that energy to invest in that kid. And it's not always just when they fail, it's before that. One-on-one meetings and is one of the greatest motivational tools. That's Rod Olson's book. Like, are you doing it before those times? Are you taking them to eat? Are you handing them the book? One thing I do, it's old school, but like I still write handwritten notes to these guys. No one does it. I'll train a guy for a week and I'll leave and write him a handwritten note. And what hit me about that is actually a kid at Kansas 5, 6 years ago. I wrote him. I went out there. He was really, really struggling as a freshman. I wrote him a note. I had known him for a couple years. And a year later, he transferred. His mom was cleaning out his apartment. He had that note pinned on his wall, Matt. But like it takes, and Darko Rajovic, the head coach of the Raptors, I was with him in OKC. I said, Darko, why don't people do this? And his answer was simple. He just said, it's too hard. It takes too much energy.
Yeah.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
The speed round. These are going to be quick questions. The first thing that pops in your head, just blurt it
All
out.
right. All right. Here we go.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh man, Oreo Blizzards. I'm just gonna say that from from Dairy Queen. I don't know if it's a flavor, but
great.
Oreo Blizzards, classic.
Greatest shooter of all time? Hard for
Um,
you. Hard for you.
I know you're brainwashed to say Steph, but yeah, probably it's Steph Curry.
Man, after the Olympics,
Yeah,
that 2 minute stretch.
but the problem I think with some of these is like we're living with it. It's easier to go
Yep.
back and be like Reggie Miller, Mark Price, whoever. But when you're like when he's done, we're gonna look back and be like, it wasn't even close.
Yeah. Yep. This is a new one, so I might throw it out. But favorite superhero?
Good one. No, great one. Don't throw it out. At least for me, and I won't ramble. But Batman. But you know why? You know why?
Well, I'm
Take a
I'm
guess.
going to guess because of the story, his background. But no, what do you got?
I do like that, but he's the only superhero that we could actually be with real superhero power. Like Superman flies, we can't do that. Flash, like we could actually
He's
be
just
Batman.
a man. He's just a man.
I like
with
that
a lot
one.
of money. With a lot of money. You know what? I think I'm going to keep it too because I'm wondering how much it maybe says something about the person.
Matt, those are the questions, and I could share them with you. I just shared a whole bunch of them with Baylor, and they're just some are who's your favorite player? Who is your toughest coach and why? These players or us, and me and Bobby Hurley just talked about it the other day at Arizona State, like it will tell you so much about players and their mind and their background. That's what we're trying to dig into anyway. But the one, what was it? What was I just going to tell you? When you ask someone their favorite player, I used to do this in recruiting all the time. If that player, this is back in the day, said Carmelo Anthony or Allen Iverson, he did not pass the basketball at all, Matt. I'm like, Carmelo. I'm like, well, I know who I'm going to be watching in AAU. It's you shoot every ball or AI. Like, it really says something about who they are.
Kevin Eastman said it was a great thing to do with players is to, in one-on-ones, to ask them who their favorite player is, not only because it tells you that, but also he said it was brilliant. I thought he said, have their favorite player send them the messages that you want to tell them. So like if they say, Steph Curry is their favorite player, write them a note of a quote that Steph Curry says,
Absolutely.
something he said that player needs to hear that you would tell them, but it doesn't matter because if you say it, but if Steph Curry says it, that's good.
Matt, that's called great coaching right there. That's
yeah,
what that
Kevin Eastman.
is.
Top 3 dinner. Let's take Jesus out. Top 3 dinner guests that you like to have any time period.
A lot, but so dead or alive doesn't matter,
Yep.
right? Ultimate Warrior from the WWF would love it. I'm actually kind of on this Barack Obama kick. Like, I don't know why. He just seems so fascinating to me. Ultimate Warrior, Barack Obama, Michael Jordan.
Nice.
Those three.
That's a good dinner right there.
Be an interesting dinner, to say the least.
Best basketball movie of all time.
Oh man, I'm not good at these right off the top. Hoosiers comes to mind. Probably Hoosiers. That's what I said. One of the best. Really good.
98%. That's the texting or talking.
Texting.
Honest. I appreciate that. I think it's for most people texting, but they want to say talking.
Well, it's part of me. That's why I changed my number back to the Final Four. Too many people hit me, and I'm like, I'm trying to be better about saying no, protecting my time, doing the things I want to.
Yeah. I live in Texas where there's no shot clock in high school basketball, so I'm just going to say that. For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
Shot clock for sure. I would agree. It teaches everyone to be better. Yeah, makes us all better.
Favorite holiday?
Christmas for sure.
2 more. What book would you give someone?
I'm a big book giver. I have certain ones I give, and a ton of them. Golly, you're making that hard. What I usually start off with, if you're a coach or a leader, Legacy Builder by Rod Olson, or True Measure of a Man by Richard Simmons III, which I don't know. Great author. No one's heard of him. Phenomenal guy. So True Measure of a Man or Legacy Builder. I'll send you both. Don't even go. But and then for players, we gave this out at Formula Zero, but John Gordon's Training Camp, the book Training Camp.
Nice. Great book. Yeah, really good. Last one, in basketball, who is the GOAT?
Oh, that's easy. Michael Jordan, for sure. That's an easy one.
I feel like you and I are about the same age. And I think that question, it goes a lot to like, when were you, in your teens and maybe early 20s, what time period, what era, who are you watching? Because you'll get some Kareems, you'll get a couple Bill Russells out there, depending. And and then now younger guys are LeBron. But it's Jordan.
Agree. I agree.
Coach, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for giving up your time, coming on and talking. I don't even know what you could say. Like, we did talk hoops, but it was just a lot more than that, like a lot deeper and a lot more about intentionality and so many great things. But I just thank you so much.
Matt, I'm a fan. Like I said, I wish I would have jumped on with you earlier. I'm proud of you for how many coaches you impact, over 200 episodes, everything you've done. It's phenomenal. So just trying to help you to continue to serve people. I can't thank you enough for choosing me to get on here.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.